All right, good people. Hello, hello, hello. My name is Janae Brown. I am the senior publisher of Open Book Publishing. And at OBP, we work with storytellers and we help them repurpose their professional expertise and their creative genius into page turning published books. And so every Wednesday, we kick it off with Dear Authors, where we connect with service providers, publishing professionals, and also other published authors to talk all things writing books, publishing books, and life beyond the book. And so today's episode is a little different because we have another Ask the Publisher. Seems like the people got questions. They be asking Brandon the questions. So we're bringing Brandon back. What's up, B? How are you, sir?
All is well. Happy to be back. Thank you all for having me. Brandon Okpalobi, author extraordinaire, CEO of DIBIA Athletic, founder of Dibia DREAM, and president of Siyanse. We just launched, so make sure you get your STEM kits for your kids for the holidays, and just excited to be here and talk to you again.
Yeah. Congratulations to all the dope stuff you have going on. And you still managed to be the author extraordinaire. Imagine that.
Just taking it one day at a time. Just trying to be extraordinary in extraordinary ways.
Dopeness. So I appreciate you because you represent the people, right? Where we are able to have this conversation where most authors or aspiring authors don't get to have a one-on-one with the publisher without having to pay for it, right? Or having a contract.
Right. Contracts in place.
Checks, invoices, all that good stuff. So aspiring authors, they always have so many questions that they want to ask a publisher. So that's why this show is so important. And so as the voice of the people, what y'all want to know? What are the questions?
So, in that process of you're writing the book and you're thinking about chapters, and then you get to that point where you finished, right?
Mm-hmm.
What is next? Just what is next once you deliver that draft?
So what is next is, it looks differently, but it's the same steps, whether it's for self-publishing or for traditional publishing. So regardless, you need to go through editing. And this is why it's super important to not edit and write at the same time, because what tends to happen is writer's block. What tends to happen is you have the same book on the computer for 3 years because you don't get it done because you keep editing stuff out. But the major issue is that you censor yourself. You will write yourself and write your voice out of the book as you continue to try to write and edit. There's a reason why you have an editor. I say all the time that behind, that saying, behind every good man is a good woman. You may not agree, but nevertheless, I think that behind every good author is a great editor.
Right.
And so the very next thing is to go through editing. Now, how it looks differently is if you were with a traditional publishing company like Open Book Publishing, when you come into Open Book Publishing or any other publishing company, they're going to have what I call the publishing players. They're going to have your editors, your book designers, your book formatters, all those people. If you're going the self-publishing route, you are solo dolo, right? And so with that, you would need to be interviewing or getting referrals for an editor. But regardless of the fact, the very next step after you write your manuscript is editing. And then you go through the various phases of editing. Some people will tell you it's about 6 or 12 phases of editing, but to simplify them into 3 major steps is copy editing, line editing, and development editing. Mm-hmm. You want an editor who I like, and at Open Book Publishing, I think that you need at least 2 editors to look at you need 2 different sets of eyes on the book. So I will get a copy editor who's going to cross the T's, dot the I's, grammatical stuff, right?
Okay.
Then you have the line editor and the developmental editor. Those could be the same person or those could not be the same person. That's a preference. Rather, it's your preference as the self-publishing author or the publisher who has multiple editors, right? And so line editing is literally going line from line, word for word to see, does everything flow? Does everything make sense? Is your author's intentions and the reader's takeaway going to be connected, right? Development editor, one of my authors was they're like the producer of the song, right? They're making sure that it flows right. They're making sure that you're taking the reader through a journey, rather it's a fictional book or a nonfictional book is still a story in its own respect, you know? And so the development editor is making sure on a high level is the book booking. Essentially, and so is the book booking. So that's what the development editor is going to be. But nevertheless, regardless if you're doing traditional publishing or self-publishing, right after the book is completed, you go into editing.
Okay. And so I'm glad you mentioned that about the two different editors, because someone would hear like, oh, editing or getting an editor and not think about the other part. And so I think that's definitely why I asked that question, to look at all the layers of what happens once you complete that draft. Like, what's the next step? So after that process, right? If you are either self-publishing or thinking about finding a publisher, why would someone go with OBP?
You would want to go open book publishing because open book publishing has a specific mission. So open book publishing is not for all authors.
Okay.
Open book publishing is specifically for authors who wrote a book with a message intending to transform communities. Our mission statement is we revolutionize communities.
Can we dive into that a little bit? We have a mission. We're specific. We have a message. That's powerful right there, right? Because a lot of people, I think everybody has a story, and I think everybody's story can change someone's life.
Yeah.
But you're focused on that, right? Like that's the main thing. We want someone with a message that's going to deliver transformational information to someone, right?
Yeah. So our mission is we revolutionize communities with pen and paper. So my background in education, I saw a lot of people who look like me who we call disadvantaged. And that drove me crazy, especially because my job was almost to connect resources at one part of my career, and all the resources was free. Right. And what I started to realize was the old saying was true. If you want to keep something from a Black person, put it in a book. And I said, well, we're going to continue to put it in a book, but we're going to advertise to the people who need the book. And that's why, like, I focus so much on being reader connected and reader focused, not just in your book, but in your marketing. If you write a book to help Janae learn how to bake a cake, you need to find the Janaes in the world who need to know how to bake a cake. And that's why, as an author, you can't be like, oh, I wrote my book for everybody. If you wrote your book for everybody, you wrote the book for nobody. And so who are you talking to? So at Open Book Publishing, we focus on stories, rather it's fiction or nonfiction. It's still a story, but we're focusing on making sure that your book can transform one person. If it can transform a person, it can transform a family. If it can transform a family, it can transform a community, aka you revolutionize communities with pen and paper. So if you are intentional about people, if you're intentional about being vulnerable enough to share what you did right or wrong, and then repurposing that professional expertise or repurposing that creative experience into a book, Open Book Publishing got you. But you have to be willing to be vulnerable and transparent enough to repurpose your experiences and your geniuses into a page-turning published book.
And so how, when I first started writing, I was on a plane to Bermuda, just dropping heat, right? In my iPhone, just going in. And then I felt really good about chapter 1. And every chapter after, I felt like I was not being as vulnerable, as open, as funny, as serious, ad libs in my head that I would put on paper as chapter 1. So I compared every chapter after that, and that slowed my process down because I'm like, it's not chapter 1. But it is a chapter in my life. And so maybe everything isn't chapter 1. So what would be your advice for someone who has a great chapter 1, maybe a great 1 through 6, but then they're like, okay, I'm not feeling that I'm my authentic self, or I'm not expressing how I want it to be. It's not sounding like 1 through 6 or things like that. How do I guess say be consistent, but also understand that maybe chapter 1 was a place in my life where I was having chapter 1 confidence. And so chapter 6 is where it was a dark place or it was a vulnerable place. And should I keep going and share the truth, or should I make it digestible?
Mm-hmm. I think you kind of answered your question, right? Chapter one might be representative of one season versus chapter six,
Mhm.
a very different season. And
Mhm.
I think you were being your authentic self. Chapter one and chapter six wasn't the same for me in my life. That's true. That's authentic. But I think ultimately, two things. One, you're not writing your book for you.
Right.
You're writing your book for your reader. So you can't focus on, am I being dope?
Right.
That's you have to focus on how can I help the reader, not
Right.
am I being dope.
Right.
Two different perspectives when you're writing your book. The second thing is, remember, that's why we edit, right?
Right.
Your development editor is considered to some people like the producer for a reason, because
Right.
they're gonna be like Diddy, like nah, do that over, bring me
Right.
some. You remember that
Take that. Take that.
when Keisha Cole was doing a song with him, and he was like, "Bring me some more heat." Like that's what your editor's gonna do. Like you can go deeper. They're gonna leave you track changes in your Google Docs or in your Microsoft Word, where they'll be like, "You can go deeper." And if
Right.
you struggle, like, what does that look like? They'll give you like probing questions to
Mhm.
enhance your writing, so that you can feel like consistently it's maintaining your voice, but it's still relevant to the actual chapter that you're in. But I would say, like, taking the publisher hat off, I experienced that. I
Right.
tell everybody that you could write your book in a week, because I wrote
Right.
publishing like the pros in a week, right? I had
Mhm.
8 chapters and I cranked it out 1 hour a day. But by the time I got to like day 6, I was like over it.
Right.
And there was a moment that I was just like, this ain't even 2,000 words, but we're gonna do it. And
Right.
then like, I said what I had to say and we done. But you
Yeah.
have to like understand that the writing process is like running, right?
Right.
You're gonna do the first mile to be killing it. By the time you get to the 7th mile, you're gonna be like, at least I
Like a
finished.
marathon. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's exactly right. So I think like understand that all of those ebb and flows of emotions and those ebb and flows of writing is what writing is. It's a
Right.
creative space that you can't control.
Right.
And that's why you kind of have to just let the book write you, and then let the editor do what editors do. You do what authors do and write the book. You
Right.
do what editors do what they do and edit the book, and you'll be fine.
Okay. So let's transition from there to okay, now the book is ready to go, right? How do I get this book in front of the people, my target demographic, right? Like, how
Mhm.
do I look at, okay, should I do a book tour? Do I need to go into different stores or different places and say, hey, this is my book and things like that? Do I, some people on social media post, like they're always posting. I'm more of, hey, if I'm feeling a certain way, I'll post. If I'm not, I don't. How do you recommend? Because at the end of the day, you're trying to get this message out. One, you're trying to have sales. Two, and
Mhm.
you're trying to make sure that this is impacting your target demographic. So how do you go about that, or what's your thought process on that?
Oh my God, so much stuff, Russ. So the first thing I would say is that you have to remember that you're gonna have to get over yourself a little bit. As
Okay.
far as like, and I'm the same way, so I'm not throwing shade. I'm not really a social media person, right? And so I'm like, I'm working. When do y'all find all the time to do all this posting? Right? But when you are in launch mode, you need to be in launch mode. This is a product that you need to push.
So
I
should we be like Khaled when he's in
Yes,
album mode? Like Khaled, because Khaled, I think Khaled is going to get you
yes,
to understand that I am dropping this on this date, and
yes.
everybody who follows me, you can't say you didn't know,
That's
right?
exactly,
We're in album mode.
and that's what everybody should say about your book coming out. If you ain't got it, it ain't because you ain't know it came out.
Right.
Everybody who is your ideal reader, you need to be intentional about cultivating a readers community.
Mm,
And what that means is you have identified that my book is for Black men from the ages of 35 to 45 who are entrepreneurs, and they have made $500,000 in sales in their respective businesses, and now they want to know how to get to 1 million. That's
right.
a very specific audience,
Right.
right?
Right.
You need, while your book is in editing, is when you need to be starting. And honestly, some people will tell you that's too late, but you need to, while your book is going through editing, you need to start doing author branding. where you're getting on podcast shows, where you're having posts on your social media, where you're getting into blogs, where you're doing all these things to position you as this person and communicating to them that you're going to be bringing them a resource.
Right.
Right. And then you need to be like Khaled, where everybody knows that this book is coming out, regardless of how you're doing it, because it is a product that you need to push. I always go back to Cheerios. Right. I probably shouldn't say this because it's on a podcast and I pray Cheerios don't come for me. I hate Cheerios. And the reason why I hate Cheerios is because my favorite cereal is Frosted Flakes. But you see a dang on Cheerios commercial every time. Exactly. And when I go to Publix and there's no Frosted Flakes, the first thing my brain's going to do is say, what? Get the Cheerios. Because it's been programmed in my head. That's part of the psychology of marketing. If you keep pushing something in somebody's head, like even, did you see the movie Focus with Will Smith? So he was a scammer essentially, and he was going to go to a football game and tell the person, if I bet on the person who's going to, if I guess the number of player, the number on his jersey, you have to give me $20,000. But throughout that whole day, without him knowing, they have been showing him the number 5. So in his hotel room, it was 5s everywhere. When he was sitting in his Uber, there was a billboard that had a big 5 on it. So his brain was programmed. Number 5. So when they said, oh, I'm gonna pick a random number, I bet you pick the number 5. I bet you pick this number. He said the number to the girl, and then he picked the number 5 because it had been programmed in his brain. You cannot say you didn't know Cali stuff was gonna drop because it's programmed in your brain. You have to do the same thing with your book. Right. How else is it going to get to people? They need to know something is coming. It needs to be programmed that you are the number 5, that you are the person that's supposed to be bringing them this resource to take their business to the next level or whatever your reader demographic is. So you kind of have to get over yourself a little bit and market your book. It's a product.
Right. So let me jump back a second. So let's say, most people come in with a title, right? I have a title. This is the title I want. And so how do you get someone to stay with the title or stay with this manuscript or stay with this book cover? Because people can change, right? Like I have a title, and then right before this, I wrote down another title, and I was like, that's nice. I'm between 3, right? 3 titles, because I think that I went through phases when I was writing, right? I wanted this was the first thought of what the book was going to be. And then it turned out to be like, okay, if I'm being vulnerable, being honest, this is kind of in everything I do, but it's a little bit more than what the focus originally was. So how do we keep the main thing the main thing?
I keep it the main thing the main thing. Just that simple. But keep it the main thing the main thing. Like what is, and that's another thing when it comes back to reader focus. I think, and God bless authors, y'all my favorite people. But sometimes you take it too personal.
Right.
You take it too personal. This book ain't about all 3 of them titles.
Right.
This book is about one thing. What's the book about? That's the title. That's it. That's all. Right. Because a lot of things you may have experienced them, or they may have been what got you to a place that you wrote chapter 6. But the overarching message of the book is what the title needs to be, so that your author can connect and be like, I need that. Right. It can't be all of these irrelevant things, because it might distract your reader from missing the opportunity to get this resource that they need. You need to develop a title and a subtitle that is going to speak to what the book is, and then a subtitle that's going to teach them, that's going to tell them how the book is going to help them. Exactly who this is, right? And so we have to become strategic with marketing. And the book title is Marketing 101 for the book. And so you can have all these cool, titles that you have, put them on a shirt.
Nice. So as I mentioned before about a book tour, right? And so I'm in Baldwin & Co. They have been blessed. I'm blessed that they've allowed me to use this space again.
Shout out to Baldwin & Co.
In New Orleans. Black owned. and doing amazing things. I think Pinky Cole came here and launched her book.
Yeah.
Stephen A. Smith is coming in January to launch his book. And so would that be myself? And I know I kind of asked this before, but I'm going a little deeper into it. Like, is that through OBP? Is that because I have hype behind me? Someone reaches out to maybe my agent or my personal page and says, hey, we want you to bring this to our community. Because you want to make sure, like I said before, you really want to make sure you're tapping into people. But I think that spaces like this, like you see all these different books behind, there's so many more books. How do authors set that up where, let's say we're not the best as far as organization, right? Like I wrote the book, I did my part, right? And so now I'm passing it off. What happens there? Like, what does that look like? What does that setup organization stuff look like?
So let me ask you a question for clarity. Are you asking how to develop a book tour, or are you asking how to get your books sold in bookstores?
Both.
Okay. So as a traditional publisher, it is a possibility that your traditional publishing company has booking agents. It's a possibility that they do not.
Okay.
Okay. So for traditional publishing, should your publishing company not have a booking agent, you could, one, become your own agent, or two, get an agent. Okay.
Right. Okay.
And so that's fundamentals, right? As far as getting your books in the store, you can get consignment deals with independent bookstores.
Okay.
Right? Where they are saying, it's very much like selling records, right? I'm going to either give you money up front and I'm going to pocket all the book sales, or we're going to split the book sales with these percentages. And then you guys have conversation about drop shipping as far as like how the books are going to get into the store, how frequently are you going to be sending your drop shipping orders, all of those things, like bulk orders for a bookstore. Okay.
Right.
Now, if you are, if you have an agent, your agent will essentially manage this deal.
Okay.
If you have become your own agent, my recommendation for you is to get a lawyer to help you with the negotiations of what those sales are going to be. But as a store, especially a store as big as Baldwin, they need to know that the book gonna sell, because if the book's not gonna sell, that is shelf life that they could be. It's like a sponsorship. I can be giving this to somebody else, right? So, and you don't want to have to pay for your own books. Right. So that's why it's important to market. That's why it's important to make sure that people know about your book and they want to come get it. That's why then you redirect your reader community about where to go to get the book. And so for bookstores, it's very easy to redirect your community and saying, go to brandonokpalobi.com or go to amazon.com. But
Okpalobi.com, just in case.
Okpalobi.com. Y'all heard that. Okay. And so if you are having your book in the bookstore, it's ideal for you to maybe do a book event where we're talking about book signings, we're talking about book launches, we're even talking about book readings, and you can integrate the book reading into all of those two major events, which is the signing and the book launch. I also would, if it was me, embedded in my contract, I will also have a conversation about the store marketing for me, because you're from New Orleans, right? But if you have it in 200 Targets, right, it might be nice for Target to advertise for me, so that
people, a partnership, right? Like it should be teamwork, because you're making money, I'm making money as well. So we don't want to not make money. Right. Exactly. And so Target probably isn't going to do as much because they're a corporate brand, but a independent bookstore, I think that you should take the initiative to ask, how do they market the book that's in their store, so that you can make sure that it's beneficial for you to put your book in this store. Because let's say, for example, your book is on leadership, right? Or and you go to a bookstore that is typically known to have like
POC historical literature books, the leadership book might be looked over from the typical traffic that bookstore brings in. So you
Okay.
also want to make sure that you are aligning your book with venues and with spaces, rather virtually or in person, where your audience is, right? Everything goes back to being reader focused. If it's the title of the book, the color of the book, the content of the book, where the book is sold, goes back to where is my audience? Even how you market the book. If you are in leadership, and I'm keep saying that's the example for today, you know that your audience listens to podcasts, right? But if your audience is children, doing podcasts may not be as good unless you're on like parenting podcasts, because they're the ones buying the book. So you have to make sure that in everything that you're doing is going to get to the person that is intended for. I will also say, do not discredit the online space, because there are opportunities where you can be on the company's.com, but not in the company's store. So you can have your book at barnesandnobles.com, but not on the shelf at Barnes and Nobles.
Okay. Yeah, I'm glad you said that, because thinking about it, sometimes people are always looking at the physical, right? Like, I need my book in the store. But at the end of the day, we've seen, let's just use the pandemic, for example. Everybody constantly getting Amazon boxes at their house, and Amazon has everything on it. So it's not necessarily, you've seen malls are not the same, brick and mortar, people are not going in, but if they could just click and buy, you know, if I'm on Target.com, BarnesandNobles.com, still selling.
Yeah.
I don't have to do the legwork, right? You know, I was talking to DJ, the owner, yesterday about, you know, he was like, if some people do it on their own, they're the ones delivering the books, right? So you're going to all these stores, you're handing these books, you have to do these things with, if it's .com, that's already taken care of by a fulfillment center, right?
Yeah, exactly. It already covers the fulfillment without you having to manually go to these bookstores and or do drop shipping. And sometimes bookstores have a .com opportunity too, where you don't have to do it in both spaces. So again, I think for like, we're not on Pinky Cole level yet, right? But there are ways to still get into Baldwin. There's ways to still get into Barnes and Nobles. And the thing about your book is it's never going anywhere. You will be dead and gone, and your book will still be living on. And so I said that to say you can scale in book selling the same way you scale in a business, right? So coming out the gate, if you release your book January 1st, 2023, you don't have to do all the things right now. You can scale into that, because you might get picked up by a big publisher that'll push your marketing so much so that Baldwin gonna call you instead of you calling them. You never know where your book is gonna take you. And so go for the ride, but be educated on the various things that you can do.
Yeah. Now, and I like that last part you said about go for the ride, right? Like it's definitely been a ride, but I think that the reason for me that I enjoy the process is because certain things happened that I would have either had to write another book, which would have been fine, or I wasn't in a mental space to include everything within that book, right? And so I think that people need to enjoy the journey, enjoy writing, but you do need to like write it. Like I think one thing was you said just write the book. Like you just write the book.
Just write the book, y'all. Like, this is ridiculous. Write the book. Write the book, because yes, enjoy the ride. Yes, your book is going to write you. All those things are true, but there has to be a time when we conclude the book and be prepared to write the next one. Everything ain't supposed to be in this book, right? It's not necessary. And people tend to think that everything they ever experience in life has to be in this book. Got to go in this one chapter. No.
All right, you got drop. You got, Jay-Z got albums, Drake got albums.
Albums. Plural.
Albums. So albums. Taylor says, bring in the lobster, bring in the books.
Exactly. That's my favorite thing to tell authors is, dear authors, do what authors do, huh? Write the book.
Write the book.
Finish the book. Don't write the book and leave it on your computer. Don't not write the book and it takes you 5 years to talk about the same thing, because you know what the scary thing is? We love technology.
Right.
And technology has accelerated everything.
Yeah.
We went from cooking on wood and fire to now warming up food for 30 seconds. And then now we don't have to turn it. We can just press the thing that says plus 30, right?
Plus 30. Yeah.
The technology has accelerated everything. And if God gives you an idea in 2020 and it take you to 2023, your idea may no longer be relevant.
No, that's true. And that's the thing that I think sometimes, I'm glad you said that, because he's going to make a way, right? Because he gave you the vision, but in the same breath, there's seasons.
Yeah.
And so that book may have longevity for however long, but the season to actually be as fruitful as it's supposed to be may pass. And so I think that, there's people around me now who will say, B, just do this or just drop that or go live or start this company. And I think some of it is the perfectionism that I'm like, okay, it has to be all the way perfect before we present it to someone, thinking that they will look at it like, oh, this is not right or that and that. And I think that sometimes the rawness of something and understanding, like Shuri on Black Panther, when she was talking to T'Challa was like, hey, these are the Kamoya beads. And she was like, okay, I made an update. And he was like, no, they don't need an update. And she said, just because something works doesn't mean it cannot be updated. The book can be edited. You see that when people now, even how albums are digital, a song might not have done well, or they might have do a remix and they added to that album. There's no difference. It just goes into your library, right? So you can always make changes. It doesn't have to be perfect today, right? What you wrote today, obviously, if it's, already printed, yes, but you can do an updated version. Like nothing has to be what it was. You can always get better. You can always update. You can always change that. And I think people need to really understand that and hear that versus saying, oh, I did it. It wasn't this or wasn't that. I'm not happy, right? You can always make an edit.
Yeah. First of all, RIP to Chadwick Boseman. Also, you better preach, Brandon. Come on, author extraordinaire, because that's real though. Like, you dropping the heat. Brandon, y'all thinks he's a rapper and stuff, but you have to give him
man, one take, Drizzy.
You have to give him his praise when you do it. But I think you're 100% right in the sense of high performers and leaders tend to become authors, right? And so in Publish Like the Pros, that's what we talk about, is getting over the need for things to be perfect. Because if you wait for something to become perfect, it'll never get out.
Right.
And a lot of times the fear of imperfection, the fear of everything being perfect will make you think that you have to have step 1 through 12 solid before you actually launch.
Right.
And you will learn in the doing. My coach tells me that all the time. Sometimes you're not going to know what step 2 is until you do step 1. And if you're sitting here waiting for step 5 to come, and you to know what step 5 is you're never going to finish this book. And then the truth of the matter is, you literally learn in the doing. When you make a step, God has a way of meeting you where you're at.
Thanks.
So I know one author was like, I haven't written my book, but I have this idea. And I said, okay, why haven't you written your book? Because I don't know of a person who can design the cover. Is that your final answer? I was just like,
that's a job, and I think sometimes we look at those things, right? Like you're like, okay, how is the cover gonna look? So I found some artwork that I like that I think is the cover. Is that gonna be the cover? Who knows? I have a title. I like the title. I have this, I have that. But all of that, like I mentioned before, is not final, right? And also everything is not your job. Your job is to write it and then find someone else. Just like in the businesses I have, my job is not always to train the client or do the STEM activities or fulfill the orders for science, right? It's a team. And once people start to understand that, it's not always going to be you. And if it is, you're going to be drained, right? I had this conversation last night about doing all the things but all of that drains your creative energy. You're creative, you need to create.
And that's it.
You need to bring in somebody else for operations or all these other things, accounting. And granted, in the beginning, that may be what you need to do, get money and things like that, fine. But you need to bring in people or you are going to be drained. And then you start to lose the essence.
Yeah.
Right? The essence. Everybody doesn't have that special sauce, essence, whatever you want to call it. Swag. Everybody is not a creative genius. Everybody does not have that. That's a special thing. And that's why it's teams, right? When you see certain brands come out, there was someone who created that logo. There was someone who created that catchphrase. There was someone who created the actual product. Those are all different things. When it's one person, it can still be great, but that's not going to continue. That brand will start to fall. You won't see the same creativeness. You won't see what attracted you because that person is drained or that two people are drained, Yeah.
And I'm glad you say that because I always say that like you need your key players in publishing, right? But a lot of authors I've seen, they take their work personally, and I respect that, right? But we can't have this belief system that I'm the only person that can do it for it to be perfect. And you can't feel like, oh, I got time, or I know how to do this, or I can figure it out. I can go to YouTube University and I can have the book the way I want it to look on my own. Because what happens is the lack of feedback prevents the lack of error. You can catch everything. And if you are not open to feedback, it's probably why you're not open to help. It's probably, so with that, if you think that you know how to do it, you won't be asking me. You won't be talking about, I got chapters 1 through 3 on my computer and it's been 5 years. You clearly don't know how to do everything, and that's okay because your zone of genius is only one thing and somebody else can help you. So definitely get your editors, get your book formatters, get your marketers, get your book agents, get all the things. And I respect the fact that you might be a self-publishing author. You don't need all the things today to start. Do your part and everything will come as you start to make traction and start to make movement. So get your key players in publishing for sure.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree with that because like I call the different players in each company like my Fab Five, right? And making sure the Fab Five is ready to go because at the end of the day, you want to make sure you want to bring the best product, of course. Like you mentioned before, that error, you can get in your zone and say like, man, I did everything right. Grammar, art and things like that, but you didn't look at it with an editor lens. And so I would say if anybody's listening to this too, if you're an aspiring author too, be open to criticism. Everything, it's not a personal attack. You ask them to read it for their feedback. So when you bring it to the public, there's no more feedback. The feedback you get are 5 stars. This was great. This was transformational. This was life-changing. Instead of saying on page 87, they didn't use the proper grammar or this and things like that because you didn't see it. You only looked at that great lens of, I was vulnerable. I brought everything. I gave it my all, right? And so it's great because I've had people, even on Facebook posts, Twitter posts, I'd be excited. I'm trying to get this stuff out. And somebody's like, yeah, you put 2 R's and, let me change that, right? Because I can. Once I drop this book, I can't go and edit these R's, right? And so I think that's very important that people got to be open to criticism and listen to different things. And so there's more eyes on it. Doesn't have to be 20,000 eyes. You can, trust a couple people and then go from there. Right.
1,000%. So what else you got, Star? What other questions the people need to know?
I think I went through all of my questions. I think I went through all my questions. You have any questions? I know last time I did all the question asking. I didn't do much answering. So you got any questions?
So talk about how it's like to draft. Like you are in draft phase, I think is what we can call it. You're finalizing your book.
Yeah, and vulnerability and transparency. It is a beautiful process because I was able to go back to places that really transformed my life. And I don't think that I was able to really enjoy those. Like I do a lot of stuff. I'm on to the next. I'm moving on. I'm on to the next. And writing allowed me to say, yo, in second grade, this is what I was actually feeling. Like at my age now, I can look and say, okay, at that time I thought this, but this was what I was really dealing with. Oh, okay, this is why I made the decision when I started this business, but this was the root cause, right? And so as I'm writing, as I'm diving into it, as I'm expressing and sharing, I can write it all down and I can say, okay, but how can I make this digestible so someone understands not to make this mistake or to actually do this, right? Because I always talk about there's no handbook for entrepreneurship. There's no handbook for being a great father. There's no handbook for being a great friend. There's no handbook for doing multiple businesses. There's no handbook for having a show on a major network. None of that is there. There's not a handbook for that. And so if I can help someone in any capacity, let me write this a little differently. Let me be a little softer here. Let me be a little bit more transparent. So for me, it's been transformational.
Yeah. And I think I'm glad that you have acknowledged that, because as an author, your book is going to start to write you.
Right.
Like, and I wrote Publish Like the Pros, and when I do all day publishing books, right? And it was like a killer. It was, believe it or not, the hardest book I've ever written.
Right.
It was the hardest book I've ever written, because I'm using my experiences to help the reader.
Right.
And so I feel like you know for sure that your book is transformational if it's transforming you.
Right.
And that we was doing another episode with Bianca Cotton, and she was talking about her book is about helping women build their confidence. But before she did that, they had to like deal with the fear, right?
Right.
And when she was having a moment, she was able to go back to her own book, and her own book was able to help her. And so I think what your experiences is the process of knowing that you're really writing a book with a message, because even though you are writing to maybe like your 3-year-old self, or yourself 3 years ago, rather, this book still is going to be helpful for even you. Even though you have lived that, there's going to be some moments as you grow personally or professionally, whether your book is nonfiction or fiction, where you can grab something from it. Like, I feel like you should be able to eat words. I think that you should be able to get full from words, right? Even the Bible says that like you eat from the product of your lips. I feel like it's food. And so with that, I think it's important to go through the draft process, B. Like, you're good, but don't take 50,000 years, because and here's the reason why. And I know I've been talking about this the whole episode. You got to go through editing.
Still got to go through editing. So I can try edit. And I know you've said this a million times to me. Like, don't try to edit it yourself. Just write it, get it out. That's the editor's job and things like that. But people need to hear that, though, because I didn't understand that until you said it.
The editing phase can be gruesome, if I'm being very honest, because it's like getting the red marker on your paper. You know, and that's why I'm like, y'all gotta stop taking everything personal. She's trying to help you get to the gold. Here, she's trying to help you get to the gold. And so, if you spend all of your time writing, then you're gonna be spending double that in editing.
Double that in editing, right?
Like, no, like, when is the book gonna come out, friends? Like, and here's what you got to keep in mind, right? Your book is going to be the answer to somebody's problem.
Right.
Books are resources. So how long are we going to delay somebody's breakthrough?
Facts.
Like, how long are you going to talk about, I'm tired of communities being called disadvantaged. I'm tired of single mothers, or I'm tired of single fathers, or I'm tired of impoverished areas, or I'm tired of food deserts, or I'm tired of not having healthy love life, or I'm tired of people not knowing Jesus, or I'm tired of whatever your soapbox is, right? Whatever's plaguing your heart that's motivating you to want to spark change.
Right.
How long is change not going to be sparked because you ain't did your part?
Right. That's real.
It's the resource. Give the people the resource.
Give people the resource.
Give people the resource.
Dear authors, write the book.
Write the book. Brandon,
Check.
I'm not talking to you. Your book is going to be so great, though. I've read 65 pages, I think, so far. It's so
Yo,
fun.
65 pages, if anybody knows me, I'm a texter, right? And so I can text, but like writing, like when I wrote chapter 1, I was really, really excited. I was like, yo, this is right here. Woo!
I got all those 60 text messages.
And then I wrote the other chapters, and then I split some chapters, and that was the delay, right? Like I was right half.
Editing that you're not supposed to be doing, carry on.
Right. And so things like that. But no, it's exciting, man. It's for me to write that. I think that's an accomplishment for me personally, and so I'm excited about it. I'm definitely am, and then hopefully it does change someone's life and hopefully helps them in some way, shape, form, or matter.
Yeah, and just a word to the matter to authors. So I'm saying like B wrote 65 pages, or I read 65 pages. 65 pages in a book. It's like 100 and something pages. Right. So don't look at how many pages you have and be like, oh, I need to write 100 more. You're writing in 8 by 11, but you're probably going to publish in 5 by 8.
Right.
So we technically, got a book, huh? Give us a book. Let's all say, give Open Book Publishing the book. It's done. Right. But yeah, I said that to say authors, it don't take that long to write a book. And a lot of times you might feel like it's not finished, it's not done. It probably is. And you have to learn when to let it go, because where are we going afterwards? Editing, right? Your editor will help you to develop it. We just need the dopeness and the genius in your brain to be on a sheet of paper, and then we can take it and run with it. And then you can get your book like Pinky Cole and Baldwin. You can get it on Target.com. You can do all the things. You can become a speaker. You can be a podcaster. You could enhance your
distribution.
You can have all these things, and helping all of these people on a global level. All you got to do is just take repurpose your creative genius and your professional expertise into a published page-turning book. You'd be good. That's it. That's all.
Mars.
That's it. That's all. So, Brandon, thank you for joining us again.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. So, can you tell the people where they can connect with Bill Nye the Science Guy?
My personal page is Okpalobi, Okpalobi on Instagram, Twitter, and then Brandon Okpalobi on Facebook. For DIBIA Athletic, where we promote excellence through athletics to help kids through basketball and hopefully soccer soon, is DIBIA Athletic on all social media platforms. For Dibia DREAM, where we spark social change through STEM and recreational education, really helping inspiring minds of the future in underprivileged communities. It's DIBIA DREAM on all platforms. For Siyanse, the company that is exploring creating new innovators for the future. It's SIYANSE, but pronounced science. But it's Explore Science on all social media platforms. For Discovery Education is at STEMcareerscoalition.org. Go to About, and then calendar of events. You can see all of the episodes that we've done thus far. And that's where you can find me.
I'd be having to take my foot off your neck when you be listening all this stuff. This man got a show on Discovery Plus, yo. Sorry, I didn't write the chapter, Janae. I guess whatever, fine. But congratulations for all the wonderful things that you are doing. It's super, super, super dope. Super, super dope.
Appreciate it. Blessed. I'm truly blessed.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so, guys, we always close out. Oh, I didn't tell y'all where to follow us. So Open Book Publishing is www.obpublishing.com. When you are ready to repurpose your professional expertise and your creative genius into a published page-turning book, visit us at Open Book Publishing. You can also connect with us on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, all the stuff where the children are child. We are there under OB Publishing, or you can search Open Book Publishing. You can also connect with me everywhere at Miss Janae B, MS Janae B as in Brown. And we like to close out Dear Authors with a author affirmation.
Okay.
And so this one is, Dear Authors, your book is a resource, so use it to help people. Okay.
To help people.
Use it to help people. Be reader focused. Rather that is for an informational book, rather it's for entertainment book. Be intentional with your words. We are living in very crucial and critical times, and your book will be the documentation of what happened. It is the record keeping for culture. So make an imprint on culture. Make sure that your words matter.
For culture.
Say it again.
Did y'all hear that? The record keeping for culture.
It is the record keeping for culture.
Yo.
So make sure that you use your words wisely and that you publish them, because only what's published is what counts. Okay. All right, good people. Have a wonderful day, a wonderful time. And until next time, good people, be well.